record. Thank you for joining us today. It is December 5th, 2016. Today's SIG-Apps meeting is going to include a demo by Eric Erlandson of Red Hat on Kubernetes native support for Apache Spark. We'll have some stand-ups, and then we'll discuss the SIG health survey. There will be some time to discuss an Ansible module for Helm. And then we'll also review the planning and retro schedules for this Kubernetes cycle at the end. There's some things on the doc, and so we'll discuss that at the end. So that's the agenda for today. If anybody has any additional items they'd like to talk about, feel free to throw it on the doc. I pasted the link in the chat. There will be no SIG-Apps meeting on December 26th due to it being a holiday for many people. Is anybody else having trouble hearing me? Okay. All right. Thank you for the feedback in the chat. Okay, so like I was saying, December 26th, we will not have a SIG-Apps meeting. Just on January 2nd, we were discussing on the doc whether we wanted to have that have a SIG-Apps meeting or not. I know January 1st is a holiday for many people, so I'm fine with canceling that meeting. I just wanted to give a chance for everybody to vote on that, I guess, in a way, at this meeting. So if you want to keep the meeting and you feel strongly about that, please type in keep in the chat. If you're okay with canceling it, or you're going to be on holiday, please let us know by typing in cancel in the chat, and then we can count those up later. Does anybody have any feedback on that they'd like to talk about? Okay, so we'll just vote in chat. So I'll go ahead and give the floor to Eric. Eric, do you want to test yourself out? Do you want to say something? Let us see if we can hear you. All right, I can't hear Eric.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Excellent.
Awesome, just in time. Okay, so I'll give it away to you. Please introduce yourself, and looking forward to your demo.
Okay, I'm going to share screen. Hopefully this works. Okay, can people see that?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, so my name is Eric Erlandson. I'm a software engineer at Red Hat in the emerging technology. Here's my email and the usual. So, I'm going to start with a sort of very, very high level review of what Apache Spark is, so that you'll have some context for what I'm about to demo. The Spark is basically a commodity scale-out computing model, and it uses declarative computing. So you tell it what to compute, and its job is to figure out how and where to compute it. So the underlying data model that it uses to do all this is called the Resilient Distributed Data Set, or RDD. So I think the distributed part of this should be familiar to anybody who's ever worked with, say, Hadoop. You have like a logical view where you have an application operating on sequences of data, but the physical view is your app is running on a master, and your data may be spread across multiple executor nodes so that you can get parallelism. The resilient part is arguably even more interesting. So RDDs contain their own compute lineage, which is to say they know how to basically recompute themselves. Also, they're immutable, so there are no computational side effects. And so the side effect of these two things is that lost partitions can always be recovered safely. What does this look like? So suppose you have a master and data spread across some nodes. And you want to apply a function to double each entry in your data. So the master takes this function and serializes it across to your executors. And then each executor actually applies that function to its partition of the data. So what happens if you happen to actually lose an executor? What will happen? It will reestablish the original data, reship the function, and basically replace the data that was lost. So this organization is a good fit for pods in Kubernetes. You can imagine the driver running on one pod, and every executor can have its own pod. So this is a good fit. It's not technically perfect because each actual executor contains a different part of the data. So you could say that these things are not quite cattle. However, it's still good because of what I just demonstrated. Spark knows how to reestablish any partition if it was lost. So you can kind of like treat executors as near cattle or effectively cattle, as long as you're willing to basically rebuild your data. If you're interested in reading more or learning more about these topics, here's a couple of links to the a presentation about Apache Spark, and another presentation on Spark on Kubernetes. So what does this look like relative to a Kubernetes cluster? You have an external client called Spark Submit, where you basically submit an application, and its job is to establish an initial driver pod inside the Kubernetes cluster, and that's what's actually running your application code. And inside of that is a scheduler backend, which knows how to spin up executor pods whenever the scheduler wants to produce a new executor. And the executors then talk back to the driver once they spin up. So what does this look like right now? There's a collaboration going on in the community. And the basic vision is upstream to create a new Apache Spark sub-project that has this code in it that knows how to actually talk to the Kubernetes clusters. It's using the Fabricate Kubernetes client library currently to do most of this work. Some basic submission parameters are obviously the actual cluster URI, which gives you the API endpoint. Spark Docker images, which are used in the scheduler and the backend, which of course actually allow you to spin up images with Apache Spark on them. You can give it a namespace, so you can define the scope of your authorizations and what can actually run inside a namespace. And the service account name, which allows a driver pod to actually create the executor pods if you don't have, say, admin permissions. So I'm going to quick kick out to a little live demo. Here's a dashboard for Kubernetes. There are no pods running on it right now. So here's a Spark submit command. You can see that I give it a default master, which means it's basically picking it off of the .kube configuration. I'm giving it a class to run, which is the classic compute Pi with Spark. I'm giving it a default namespace and some images that I basically am working on in progress. So that's my Docker account. I'm asking it for basically 2 executors, so it's a static cluster at this point. So I will kick that off. And if I look at what's happening with pods, there is the driver, and it should spin up relatively quickly with the executors. Yep, so okay, now it's got the 2 executors it asked for. Everybody's running. It's a very short-lived application, so it's probably done by now. Not quite. There you go. So, okay, the driver succeeded. You can go in, look at the log output, and somewhere in here, there's like 1 line of output and 1,000 lines of a log, but here you can see it actually computed pi as 3.14. So right now, to date, there have been 4 people interested in directly contributing. Anirudh Ramanathan from Google created the initial branch that I started working with. And I submitted some pull requests over the last few weeks to add some stuff. And that's basically the current state of the code that got submitted as a pull request against the Spark upstream. And then there's I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, Yanu, who is also going to do some work with third-party executors he wants to contribute, and Matt Che, who actually produced an entire parallel implementation, which has a lot of cool stuff on it that we're going to be pulling in also. There's been a draft roadmap produced, so phase 1 is a sort of MVP style, which supports essentially the functionality I just demoed, Spark submit, and allowing a static executors with Scala or Java. Matt's implementation actually allows you to put the local data up on, push it up on the cluster. So we're going to fold that in. Phase 2 will have dynamic executor support for Spark's dynamic executor feature. And then phase 3, hopefully extend the security features and also add Python and R. And then some more advanced stuff, which actually may require features in Kubernetes that aren't available yet. A Spark shell client mode, which can talk directly to the cluster from outside. Improved storage options for Spark's external shuffle service, and possible resource sharing, like fair shares quotas, and an actual user interface, GUI. So here's the Jira upstream and the pull request. And if anybody's interested in seeing this happen, I definitely encourage you to get up on the Jira or the pull request and vote it up or leave comments or just generally participate so that the upstream community is aware of people who are interested. That's the presentation.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Eric? Okay, silence means no. Thanks so much. I have a quick question. What does the setup process look like right now with Kubernetes? Where did you get the Spark submit from?
Well, there's different ways you can do it. I mean, Spark submit, I just actually build the repo, and when you build it, you get, all the basic Spark commands. So that's how I ran it. I mean, you can actually, of course, download it. And then, of course, to actually work in this environment, you have to have, corresponding Docker images that have the same build of Spark on it to run it. So we're currently trying to figure out what the community wants to do, if there's going to be official Spark images, or if people will publish their own. And right now, the current state of affairs is I've published imagery which people can use. I think other people may also have, but there's no official image. So you have to basically figure out which images you're going to use, make sure you have a build that's synced up on your machine. And then the current branch doesn't have the facility for taking a local jar file and pushing it up. I said Matt Che's version does, but we haven't folded it in yet. So you kind of got to get something up on your jar file, up on S3 or some kind of network visible URL.
All right, thanks. So if nobody has questions, excuse me, then we can continue. Eric, thanks again for your demo. And would you mind pasting the link to your slides in the chat or in the doc, please?
Yeah, I will. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Next up, we've got stand-ups. So Helm's up first. Matt Butcher, you're on.
I am. Just trying to type into chat real quick, asking if he could post that. If you could post that link for the Spark on Kubernetes blog, because I'd like to read that. That was really interesting. Okay, so last week Helm released 2.0.1. This week we'll release 2.0.2 to fix a bug that I left in 2.0.1. But things are going along pretty well. We're trying to stay on top of the patch releases and release fairly frequently with the kind of very minor bug fix only sorts of releases. If there's ever anything really substantial or major in there, we'll make sure to communicate that effectively. But for the most part, these are incremental patch updates. We haven't hit anything really seriously awful yet. Let's see. The 2.1 roadmap is probably about 60 or 70% complete. We officially haven't committed to releasing that until January, but we are continuing to work on some new features and some new improvements in the 2.1 development cycle. Again, thanks to the huge uptick in community contributions. We've rolled in more patches faster last week than we expected, given it was a recovery from holiday week. But as we do head into the holidays, we anticipate that some of the feature development will slow way down. And then, of course, particularly between Christmas and New Year's, I imagine that the Slack channel will get very, very quiet. And many of the core contributors, including myself, are off for substantial periods of time around from like December 22nd through January 2nd or 3rd. So it'll be a little bit sparse around the chat room and stuff. That's all I got. Thanks.
Thanks, Matt. Lucky, do you have anything for the charts repo?
Hello. Nothing specifically. I just took a look through what was merged last week. There are a couple of new additions that are still under review. The whole influx stack is there. So we've got Telegraph, InfluxDB, chronograph capacitor charts that are under review at the moment. If anybody's interested in them, they're great contributions. And there also looks like there is an Nginx Lego chart as well. So an Nginx ingress controller. So there are a bunch of new additions, and there's a lot of review on the existing charts now. And we're just cleaning them up given what people know now, which is great. So thank you very much for pointing out things that need to be cleaned up. We're getting to them as fast as we can. So thank you very much. Thanks, Michelle.
Thanks, Lucky. All right, anybody from the DefaultSet team want to give an update on what's going on there?
Hey, this is Eric. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, very barely, but yes.
Is this better?
Yeah, much better. Thanks.
So the folks that I sit next to at Google have been on a binge of document writing, and we've just been focused on having great documentation, and there's a lot of stuff on Kubernetes at github.io, so anyone wants to go over there and search for StatefulSet and comment on issues. I also shared a documentation plan that I'll put a link to in the notes if anyone wants to see the approach we're taking to documentation and suggest anything missing. And I think we're on track to have a great StatefulSet beta in 1.5. Thanks.
Thanks, Eric. Does anybody have any questions on StatefulSet? Okay. Does anybody have any questions on Helm before we move on? Okay. Anybody from the Compose team here to give an update on Compose? We had one last week, but if anybody wants to say a few words here, now is the time.
Yep. Hi, I'm here. So, but there is not much new since last week. Basically, we are still fighting a little bit with all the dependencies and vendoring. So yeah, that's basically all.
Okay.
So if anyone wants to help us, it would be very great and look how we do all the vendoring and maybe give us a little bit input, because most of us, we are pretty new to Go. So we would really appreciate some help there.
Awesome. Thank you. Does anybody want to give an update from the AppController team?
Yeah, for sure. I'm here. It's Andre. So last week, basically, we were able to read this basic AppController container image. We did some refactoring to support easier new types and easier integrations with other stuff. We also started Helm integration. Yeah, we solved some dependencies problems. Currently, AppController supports Kubernetes 1.4 branch. We are working in moving it to 1.5 stuff. Yeah, and we also added new Kubernetes objects, so we are currently missing only service account object, and the rest stuff is there already. And by the way, Piotr Siwczak from Urantis is doing AppController demo on Kubernetes Bay Area meetup this Thursday, so everyone is welcome there. So, and that's basically my update. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Does anybody have any other updates they'd like to give? Okay, silence means no. Okay, so we can move into the scheduled discussion topics, and the first one is the SIG Health Survey. Eric, do you want to take it away for this one?
Yeah, sure. I put notes in the agenda. I put notes in the agenda saying what the answers are, so I'll just quickly say them, and if nobody jumps out and says I missed something, I'll click submit. Based on what we said last time, I think we feel like we have 50 to 75% test coverage, but we have no real data. I think that if somebody else built a coverage system, we would use it. Does anyone else think we would or wouldn't use coverage data if we had it? No chats, so I'm just going to say we would, because I've used it before and it's useful. I think I felt like from the conversation and what I see people do, maybe 25% of our time is spent on responding to user issues. It's averaged over a lot of different groups. Some do more, some do less, I think. So I'm going to say 25% there. Over the last two releases, I felt like from the discussion, there's about a 50-50 balance between new features and stability. It's hard to define exactly what new features was, but I chose 50-50 as representing a healthy, balanced project. No one seemed to think we were not healthy in the last time we discussed it. If anyone's had new thoughts on reflection, please feel free to speak up. Okay. And then I use the GHI tool, which is pretty cool if you haven't used it before. It searches GitHub issues. And I tried to count all the issues that have core controllers in them, because I think this question was mostly about Kubernetes/Kubernetes, which is kind of a problem with the survey. But I saw we had about 600 open issues, and then I think a lot of stuff's mislabeled, so I'm going to call it 1,000, since that's how the buckets are divided in the survey. And I would love people to spend time just looking at issues on Kubernetes and applying the labels that they see. And I've used the names of the labels we use for core controllers. Clearly there's more than 7 stateful set issues, even though my search only found 7. So help labeling there would be useful. It might be like a pet set to stateful set label rename issue. And then I tried to find flakes and I could only find one that's responsible for, so that's good. So
regarding test flakes, I'm pretty sure it's much more than one for deployments and stateful sets, and I have seen others as well.
Okay, I'll leave this open for half a day. Can somebody point me at some labels or search methods I can use to find the additional ones, and just comment in the agenda doc?
Sure.
Thanks. That's all I got. I'll wait till the end of the day and then submit the thing, and we'll talk about it if anyone comes to that.
Thank you so much, Eric. Any questions on the SIG survey? Okay, great. Pablo, are you around for the Ansible module of Helm discussion?
Yes, hi, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so let me share my screen.
Pablo, would you mind introducing yourself as well?
Yes, I'll share my screen and then I'll introduce myself.
Right. Thank you.
Can you see the
Yes.
slides? Yes, okay. Yes, so what I'm going to talk about is essentially the use case of Helm within Ansible. My name is Pablo Moreno. About me, I'm a senior bioinformatician at EMBL-EBI, which is the European Bioinformatics Institute, which has the mission of taking care of biological data for Europe. So essentially we deal with genome sequences, proteomics data, etc. And I work particularly within a project for the EU, which is an Horizon 2020 project, which the idea is to bring cloud computing for metabolomics data analysis. So the end user there is essentially life sciences researcher who don't have any sort of technical skills about sort of cloud deployment or anything. So we are essentially trying to build something that allows them to use this without having to deal with all of the technical parts. So the idea within our project is that we try to bring sort of workflow environments for these people to use, and all of this is uploaded into a Kubernetes cluster. So here's where our use case with Helm and Ansible comes. So on top of the container orchestrator architecture that Kubernetes provide, and we currently deploy this through this cargo project, which is part of the incubator. What we need on top of that is to deploy, of course, the applications that we have written for the workflow environment and for the different analysis tools that work on top of that. So this is the part where we need to use Helm on top of all the deployment done with Terraform and Ansible to be able to, on a single deployment from A to Z, be able to provide the user with the end application that they want to use without them even knowing that Kubernetes is behind everything. So essentially, for our use case at least, what we need to be able to do is very simple. Essentially, get Helm into one of the nodes, extract it, put the binary somewhere that works, wait, call the init, wait until the init is done, and then add our Helm repo, and then install one of our tools that essentially takes care of most of the things. So originally, what I wrote is simply some shell calls that will do this, but of course the idea would be to have a proper Ansible module that would allow us to do this, to do all of this, and take care of so many things like idempotency of the different paths and so on. So when I asked at one of the Slack channels about this, I was told that no one had done it, and that I should sort of contact you guys to get some feedback on how this should be done, or what other sort of elements should go into the use case so that we can start coding something as an Ansible module. So that's mostly let me just leave this here. So that's mostly the use cases as we see it, at least. But of course, I presume other people might have other interests on this.
Very cool. Is anybody else using Ansible and Helm?
So within Cargo, in the Cargo channels, there was one other person interested on this. But besides that, I haven't heard of anyone.
So if I'm understanding this, you're using Ansible to install and manage Helm, but you're not using Ansible to actually drive Helm actions with regards to, or maybe you are, I guess you're using it to also install your Galaxy chart. So you're actually managing the application through Helm, through Ansible.
Well, it's mostly for the setup of the application, yes. Once the application is done, it's there. We don't need to do much, I guess. So the point is that the whole cluster is initially sort of provisioned with Terraform and Ansible. So it makes sense for us to sort of extend those Ansible roles to include the Helm parts, so that you could deploy particular applications that have been provisioned that have been sort of encapsulated as Helm charts.
Cool. Yeah, I know this is definitely something that we're interested in from an OpenShift perspective, as far as using Ansible to manage your applications, and whether that's driving those applications through Helm or through some other mechanism. But at the top level, using Ansible to install and manage them is definitely a pattern that we're looking into.
Yeah, this is Matt Butcher. I have heard a few times on the Slack channel and various other forums, people have asked for whether or not there were plugins for things like this or various other tools. So we have the Helm community largely has a vested interest in seeing this kind of stuff done well and then supported from there on out. So if there's anything we can do to help out, we're happy. Short of actually doing all the coding, the Helm core team is happy to help do whatever we can to promote and recruit developers and stuff like that. I did actually go and read the Ansible plugin documentation and prep for this today, and it does look very doable to build something like this that would make, what are these called? These aren't charts and playbooks. Are they called playbooks? That would make whatever the Ansible things are much easier to write if we could do a Helm plugin and do it well.
Yeah, they're playbooks.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to contribute with the Ansible module for this, but I don't know if there's anything that I need to keep in mind, or any other particular use cases that are relevant. Or, for instance, one of the things that I had to hack a bit here was to be able to wait until after the Helm init, after the tiller pod was sort of running. So it would be great. For instance, Helm init would have something like a wait flag to be able to wait there until that happens, or provide some other mechanism besides someone just running Helm list until it provides no error.
Yeah, I think where we see some value here would be in Ansible modules that allow you to more generically interact. So being able to wait for a pod and not having to do that through a shell operation that does like a kube control list or something, but actual first-class Ansible modules that would allow you to manage your Kubernetes cluster and the pods that are within it and things like that. So we'd definitely be interested in hearing what challenges you ran into and what Ansible functionality would be better if it was a first-class Ansible function as opposed to what you had to do to kind of roll your own from an Ansible perspective.
Okay, then fantastic. So I'll let you know when I start with this and have some progress.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? All right, we'll continue. So the next part is, okay, so we have, I'm going to share my screen. Pablo, would you mind stopping your share?
Yes.
Thank you.
Let me just stop share here.
All right. Okay, so can everyone see my screen okay?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, so let's see. Oh, we have some planning and retros on the schedule that Eric suggested. Thanks, Eric, by the way. And for over the next couple of weeks, I just wanted to go over that real quick. So December 12th is the next meeting, and we're doing a 27 planning for SIG-Apps that Eric will lead. And then the following week, we have a tentative retrospective scheduled. Based on the chat feedback, we'll go ahead and cancel January 2nd's meeting and move all of this agenda to January 9th. And then we are doing a 1.6 planning. But here we see a comment saying that might only leave us with 3 weeks of coding left in that period. So that's what it's looking like right now. do we want to adjust any of the suggestions? And Eric, do you want to talk about the preview for the 2017 planning? Excuse me. Those are the two outstanding comments on that topic.
Sure, I can say a little bit about the idea, if that makes sense. So in my company, we do high-level like planning for themes for the year, and then we do quarterly planning. For 1.5, we did a collaborative SIG-Apps 1.5 planning, and I thought that went well. We haven't done 1.6 yet, and there's a short amount of time, but I find it useful to try to agree on yearly themes before doing quarterly planning, and then the quarterly planning has more detail. I'd like to try that since I've had my head deep in looking at like the workloads area, SIG-Apps area, from a yearly perspective to give feedback to people in my company. I've distilled that into a public talk, which I view not as me saying what to do, but like I wouldn't presume to do that, but like a starting point for a discussion. I'll send that out later today. I didn't quite get it polished in time for now, but what I would like to do is give everyone comment and edit access that wants it, and just build on top of that, and then see if at the next meeting we can discuss contentious points and see if we have a set of themes we kind of agree on. And then the next meeting after that, we can go down into specific items for 1.6. That's my hope, and I want it to be very open. So when you see a doc come out, please take it not as a final thing, but in that spirit. Thanks.
Thank you, Eric. Does anybody have any questions for Eric? Okay, and so my personal thoughts would be, I think that's a great idea, especially considering the fact that we had so much in our 1.5 target list, and it felt like we wanted to cover so much, and we can't do everything in just one cycle. So doing the themes would be really nice, so we can break it up and that way into smaller chunks. So I personally really like the plan. So if nobody has objections, we'll continue. But if you do, feel free to speak up now, or we can discuss it in the chat as well.
Yeah, I have a question related to the detailed planning for 1.6. Since there's not much time left for 1.6, could we skip the retrospective on December 16th and move it actually after the New Year's Eve and do the yearly planning next week? And in 2 weeks, do the detailed planning for 1.6. That will give us at least a little bit more time to actually scope what we want to have for 1.6, since we will be closing that in, if I remember correctly, close to the end of January. Would that make sense?
Yeah, that's fine with me. That sounds good. Okay, so we'll change that on the agenda. Well, that's fine with me, but does anybody else have any objections? Seems like Eric's good with that too. Okay. So we'll go ahead and put that down for December 19th and switch the retro and the planning. Okay. Let's see what else is on the list for today. Okay, so config maps as environment variables. There's a discussion pasted in the agenda about that. Michael, are you here to talk about that?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
So the last part of this proposal is to actually share this with SIG-Apps and get any necessary feedback for changes before we actually go and implement this. So the whole proposal, and I put the link in there, is allowing people to point to an entire config map that can populate your environment variable or your set of environment variables, which is a bit more than what you can do today, where you have to key by key define what environment variables get declared in your pods or in your containers. So though there was a late addition in this proposal, which was allowing people to prefix or add a prefix to the environment or to the config maps when you're exposing environment variables, so that people could distinguish between where environment variables came from. So I can let, we're not going to, I mean, this is going to be for 1.6, so it's not a 1.5 thing. So we have a lot of time to make any more changes as we see fit. But this is really for awareness so that people know that this is coming. We're also going to be looking at applying a similar thing for secrets. So once we get the config map part done, there'll be the secret part as well, which will follow very similar rules and processing that config maps have. There's also a PR with the code behind this as well. So I've been keeping it, the code and the proposal in sync. So that way, if people want to actually try it or see how it's going to work, they can test it out as well. Are there any questions, I guess?
Yeah, I'm definitely going to try this out. I bet I'll reduce a lot of text in the manifest file. So yeah, does anybody have questions about this? Michael, would you be interested in like giving us a quick demo at the next meeting?
Sure, that shouldn't be a problem.
Great, thank you. Does anybody else have questions? Okay, great. Thanks again. So we have like 17 minutes left. Does anyone have something they'd like to discuss that wasn't on the schedule? I'll take silence as no. But I feel like we got a lot of different discussions in today, so you can have 17 minutes back. All right. Well, have a great week, everyone, and thank you for joining. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.